Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the interview series that the Margaret Chase Smith Library is doing. Started this summer, and I have been calling it the Summer Interview Series, but I guess we just need to call it the Interview Series at this point because we are going into the fall and pretty soon the winter as the nights get longer and the days get shorter. My name is John Taylor, and I'm the museum assistant at the Margaret Chase Smith Library. Typically, you usually see the executive director, Dr. David Richards, conducting these interviews. But I'm going to be conducting this interview today because I'm also the state coordinator for National History Day, and our guest, Ben Doty, has a few connections to the library, but we also has a lot of different connections to National History Day, and especially the program in Maine. So we're going to talk about that a little bit too. We'll get into that a little bit later. But I just wanted to introduce our first guest. This is, like I said, Ben Doty, who's originally from Cornville, Maine, but now living in Leicester, England. And I'm going to throw out the first question to you, Ben. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and your connections to the Margaret Chase Smith Library.
Yeah, well, as you said, John, I grew up in Cornville, which is literally the next town over to Skowhegan. So I went to the Margaret Chase Smith Library quite a few times growing up on school trips. Or just family trips or things like that. I'm honestly not sure of the first time that I went or every single time, but yeah, it's definitely quite a lot of experiences going to the library in my childhood. But as I got older, when I went off to university, graduated, came back home looking for something to do. I started volunteering at the Margaret Chase Smith Library, and that's how I wound up helping out at National History Day as well when we started doing it at the Margaret Chase Smith Library and the University of Maine hosting it. So a number of different interactions through time.
Yeah, I was kind of going through some of our archive a little bit and trying to find a few pictures of you, and I could think of three specific things that you're connected to the library. And correct me if I'm wrong. Of course, there's National History Day, which again we'll get into in a little bit. But we also have that I think you came there for is it a Boy Scout or a Cub Scout project? Were you?
Yes. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and then I do you remember what that project was at all? Put you on the spot.
Not in the slightest.
Okay, and then of course you came with your school as well, correct? Is that it was the Skowhegan Junior High School, right?
Yeah, and it would have been several times actually with school because I can definitely remember in high school. Last year in high school, I was in a class that essentially wound down about a month before school finished.
Mm-hmm.
So we did a research project at Margaret Chase Smith Library and sort of putting together a whole bunch of original historic sources in support of trying to make I guess it was a sourced question. So a historic question answered with a whole series of different original documents, the sort of the foundation of archival research.
Oh, okay.
So definitely, I can remember that. And I'm sure that I would have come along in junior high school as well, because if you are just down the road from the Margaret Chase Smith School, I'm sure it's quite tempting for teachers to be able to just sort of dip in and get a bit of local history and national history at the same time.
Absolutely, and that's something that we're missing right now, especially with all the closures and everything as we're dealing with this COVID crisis. Is that we're missing all the school groups that are coming into the library. None of the we're not getting any field trips this year. So it's very sad to not have any kids coming in and using our resources and learning about Margaret, especially the local students. But I do have a few pictures that I did find in our archive, and so I am going to try to share those a little bit. And maybe we can get, let's see, on screen 2 there. There we go. Do we see that there?
Oh, yes, we do.
So the reason I was guessing it was Cub Scouts and not Boy Scouts because you're wearing a blue shirt there.
Yes, that is definitely Cub Scouts, and that would be my second year of Webelos, so my last year of Cub Scouts.
Okay. And did you actually go into Boy Scouts then too?
Yes, yeah, I made Eagle Scout actually in 2004, I think.
Really?
Yeah,
I had no idea that you did that. You know.
yeah.
So what was your final project?
Fixing up the playground at the Cornville School, actually, just to come back to Cornville, which apparently is sponsoring this. But yeah, just sort of adding some bits into the playground, shoring up a piece of equipment that was falling down, painting some Foursquare and hopscotch and stuff patterns on the pavement and things like that.
Oh, cool.
Mm.
Wow. Learn something new every day. There we go. So yeah, if we have a picture of you with your Cub Scouts uniform on. I think you coming out. That is, of course, our research room. It hasn't changed much in the years. I believe this is this is dated March 23rd, 2000. So
Yep.
20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We're able to find you in a picture in this snazzy shirt here as well. Any idea what this would have been connected to?
Yes, yeah. So that's Mike T and Brian, and that would have been second year in middle school. And this is actually connected with National History Day. So Mike and I did a video project together about Japanese American internment. I can even still remember the category, which was Rights and Responsibilities in History.
Oh, nice.
And we ended up, I think we took second in the state and went on to nationals. And Brian did I can't he dressed up. He acted it out. I can't remember the actual category name, but he was, I think he was Robert Owen. And so talking about utopian societies and reform and what have you in the 19th century.
From New Harmony, right? New Harmony, Indiana. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow. Okay. I have connections in Indiana, of course, and so I've actually taken field trips to New Harmony. That was one of our big ones that we took in high school, my sophomore year. For people who don't know, I'm originally from the Indianapolis area, and yeah, that was the big high school all-day trip you would take. It's a 4-hour bus ride down to New Harmony, because it's out in the middle of nowhere in southern Indiana, and then spent the whole day there. So yeah, I know all about Robert Owen. I had no idea that we had a performance. I'm assuming it was a performance, correct?
I think so. Yeah, that sounds right. And yeah,
So,
he would have placed as well at the state level and gone on to nationals as well.
I should say, for people who aren't familiar with National History Day, it is an educational program here in the state, and there's one in every state, and there's actually 58 affiliates in the world for National History Day. And it's a program that actually encourages middle and high school students to do their own independent historical research. So we have students pick whatever topic they would like that interests them the most, as long as it connects to our yearly theme. And then they go out and into the world and do their own research, hopefully at archives and libraries. And then they present their work in one of 5 ways. They're going to do a paper, an exhibit, a performance, a website, or a documentary. And then we have a contest tiered system in the state of Maine. We have 3 regional contests right now. Hopefully, knocking on wood, we'll have 4 here in about a year or so. And then the state contest, and then we have the national contest. The winners from the state contest get to go down to the national contest at the University of Maryland and exhibit their work against students from all over the country and the world. So you said that you did a project with Mike, right?
Yeah.
I was in that picture, and it was a documentary, correct?
It was, yes.
And you said it was over the Japanese internment.
It was.
Yes. I can't believe you remember the theme that year. So tell me what it was like to do a documentary back in 2003, because it's got to be completely different than what it is today. Because today students have computers and all this digital technology. you know, I know I've been around working with NHD since 2006, and it's changed quite a bit. But at this point, students actually just submit their documentaries to me digitally,
Mhm.
and and judges stream them at this point. Now I know that didn't work for you in 2003. How did it work then?
Well, yeah, I mean, we had we had computers. I was a few classes before every student in Maine wound up with a laptop. But there were, there were computers in the classrooms, and we were using iMovie for it, a very early version of iMovie, and it, for the most part, boiled down to doing research, finding pictures online, and recording audio onto the computer if you could get everyone out of the room. So usually at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And if we needed video, this is several years before YouTube or anything else that you could easily just snag video off of. So I can still vividly remember wheeling in one of those giant TVs and VCRs on a big whole setup and hooking it into the TV and playing VHS tapes and taking off footage of the Pearl Harbor attacks or other things for the documentary just to get them onto the computer. And then the massive amount of time that you'd have to spend sitting there and wait while it rendered,
Oh,
the
yeah.
6-minute video going on for hours and hours and hours to render, and then to burn it to a disc, because that's how we ended up having to do it, is to burn it to a DVD and then not send it in, but just bring the DVD with us to the contest and play it there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was a cumbersome endeavor to do, obviously. I mean, if I remember correctly, it used to be that you had to bring your own equipment too. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
I think so. That sounds right, because there were a number of us doing documentaries. So I bet Mr. Belrose coordinated bringing along. Oh, I don't even know if we burned a DVD. Actually, we might have burned a VHS tape. I've got a couple at my parents' house.
2003 wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. But yeah, we probably did bring along our own equipment. I also did a documentary the previous year, which didn't do as well. And I remember had already produced a PowerPoint on the topic, and had to have explained why we couldn't just submit the PowerPoint and stand next to it and explain what they were seeing at each stage, why that wouldn't work as a documentary. And then at the last minute, turning it into a documentary and, not surprisingly, not making it to nationals that year.
Well, you'd be surprised at how many times I've actually still get that question, whether or not they
really?
make a type of PowerPoint type of project, at this point. Do you remember what the topic was for that year? What that you did, or what your topic was?
I did a project on the French Revolution. I have no idea what the topic was, though.
Okay.
It was more sort of a last minute thing where I've been doing a lot of research on the French Revolution for a class, produced a project, and then a teacher said, hey, you should get involved with NHD. But we then didn't have a whole bunch of time to retrofit it or to think about how it related to the theme or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, they tend to write themes that are broad enough that you can, with justification, fit anything in. So I think we probably did a lot of after the fact justification.
So how many years did you actually compete in NHD?
Just those two.
Just those two. And then were there a lot of students from your class or your school that participated at that time?
Yeah, actually, there were quite maybe 5 or 6 different groups each year, maybe at least a couple groups each year. It wasn't really, it didn't feel like something that was an official after school activity or something. It wasn't like there was a school history team, but there were teachers who were involved in NHD and who knew about it and got us involved that way. But yeah, not like organized practices or get-togethers or anything. It was just, well, we're all here together after school, so I suppose we should probably crack on with working on this documentary or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, can you give us a sense of, because at this point now in 2020, 20. I mean, we basically had to go virtual this year.
Mm-hmm.
We did have one in-person contest. Like I said before, we have 3 regional contests right now, hopefully 4 very soon, and a state contest. And we had, the numbers are down a little bit this year because of the coronavirus, but we still had almost 700 students participate in the process. What was it like in that 2002, 2003? What was the program like?
I seem to remember there were a lot of posters, and that seemed to be the most popular category. Documentaries were nowhere near as big. There were maybe half a dozen groups total, so the Skowhegan contingent would have been a good chunk of those competing.
Nice.
Maybe a couple more, but not a lot of different groups in the documentary division. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound anywhere near the sorts of numbers that you're dealing with these days.
But yeah, I mean, and at that time it was what, a state contest, and that's all
It was.
that they provided here in the States.
Yeah, and the second year, I know they squeezed us all into the Armory building in Augusta, which, I mean, it's a big auditorium, but it's not that big.
Yeah, and I can't imagine having all the different categories where you don't have them walled off or sealed off somewhere. So you got a performance in one corner and a documentary in another corner, and they're going and they're competing with each other. I can't imagine.
Yeah. So, the year before that, though, that was at the State Museum, which I still remember roaming about the museum between periods or competitions with everyone else there. Yeah, losing everyone at one point. They had all gone to lunch. No one had told me, that sort of thing.
Oh, lovely. Nice.
Yes.
So I'm going to put up a couple of other pictures here. I can't even remember everything that I've put up here. So, but I did want to put this one up here because this is your teacher, Jim Ramsey, right?
It is, yes.
Yes. Who sadly just passed away, but it was a friend of the library. And I saw you had put a post up about him as well on your social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just thought I would add that one in here. Well, we were able to find one with you in the photo as well. So there's Ben right there. Do you remember what you were doing there for that project?
That probably was around, he had such a variety of interesting different sort of projects and topics, but one of the perennial projects in his class that every group would go through was a project about life in the 50s. So looking at politics and society and technology. So just what life was like going through the baby boom, the post-war prosperity, the Cold War, that interesting period. And the project, there was a lot of reading around it, watching documentaries, and ultimately you would produce something that involved a good deal of performance, but also documentary elements. Our year ended up producing, I think, an hour-long movie, actually, with various different skits and songs and straight, more narrative pieces. But other years would turn it into more of an on-stage performance. So yeah, it was a project around the 50s in general, and of course Margaret is sort of a big part of the story of the 50s and excesses of anti-communism and everything involved in that. So a trip to the Margaret Chase Smith Library was a big help in doing that research.
Oh yeah, well, it sounds like I would have loved that class.
It was a great class.
As a post-war historian, I would have loved that. Yes. Do you happen to have that movie anymore?
Probably in my parents' attic somewhere.
That's very interesting, because you're able to be so creative and yet still do all that research too. So.
Oh yeah. It's sort of a good mix of you never exactly knew what you were getting into, if it was if you were just doing a more sort of a conventional almost a book report, or you were going to be writing a pages long rap in blank verse or something like that.
Yeah.
Or even sort of combining the two. So yeah, he always had interesting projects that took you deep into different topics.
Sounds fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
We got a couple other photos here. Of course, this is when you were either volunteering or you became a temporary employee at the library. I had no idea exactly what you're doing there. I think you're going through Jan Sherman's collection there, maybe?
Yeah, I think that was hers. Certainly one of Senator Smith's biographers, because yeah, I can recognize that it was just absolutely filled with photocopied newspapers
Mhm.
and other things of that nature. Clearly found something interesting that I wanted to show to Dr. Richards, but I don't know exactly what.
Yeah, actually, Dr. Richards just interviewed Jan Sherman maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, something like that.
Oh,
So yeah, yeah, she donated her entire research collection there for the book that is considered the authorized biography of Margaret. So you were able to go through all that and help Angie Stockwell catalog that.
yes, absolutely. Doing an initial pass and getting out also duplicate documents and things of that nature.
Which actually helped me out later on when I did an exhibit on Clyde. I was able to
Oh, right.
easily access a lot more information on Clyde through those newspaper articles as well. This is also when you were working or volunteering there, and you got to meet Senator Alan Simpson,
Yes.
Wyoming, who was a very interesting fellow.
I don't think he was there for long, but
no,
certainly a photo opportunity.
Which was very cool. And of course, we have our director, Dr. David Richards, and Davita, who's on our board, and Lynette King, who actually retired last year. And I'm not sure if you're even aware, but Angie retired as well last month. So.
Oh yeah, I think I saw something about that.
So it's right now it's just David and I as the lone people left here. And then this is, of course, you helping me with NHD. This is, of course, our first year at NHD.
Yes.
So the University of Maine and the Margaret Chase Smith Library, who they're associated with, took over the program in 2014. At that point, it was struggling pretty bad. It was just that nobody wanted to take it on. And I had prior experience as an intern in Indiana, running the Indiana program and setting up a regional contest in a very rural part of the state of Indiana. And so because I said that, someone decided, well, we should make John do this. And so at the time you were volunteering at the library.
Yeah.
And that's how I actually got my start at the library too, was volunteering when I moved up here. And then we were able to find some money and hire you on temporarily for you to help me kickstart this program in 2014. And little did we know how crazy it was going to be running that first year. And I say that because now, it's 2014. We only had a state contest at that time. It's now and still is at the University of Maine. And it's usually at the end of April, beginning of May. But that was our first time actually running a program as the head of that program. And we did not give ourselves, I do remember, we did not give ourselves enough time to actually plan it. I typically try to do the in-depth planning and organizing of a contest about 3 weeks now. And we gave ourselves 2 weeks and we had to start everything from scratch.
Yeah.
Like everything, all of our materials we had to create out of the ether. There is absolutely no way that would have been done without your help. So yeah, but this is us. I think it looks like we're putting the judge packets together, so we're getting pretty close to contest time at that point. So
Yeah.
But and then finally we got a picture of you and Rebecca, your fiance Rebecca, as you guys came back to visit. I think maybe a year after you moved to England.
Yeah, that seems about right.
Talking about putting the materials together, one of the things that you did was you created our logo. We
Yes.
did not have a brand, right? When we took it over. I think prior to that, I don't think there really was ever a logo for National History Day in Maine. And so,
No, just the national logo, really.
yeah, right. And so you kind of dabble in graphic design and stuff like that. I'm not sure if you necessarily have like you don't have a degree in that, right?
Oh God, no way, no. No,
But
I've yeah, but I've tinkered enough with, it starts out with just sort of putting your head on the movie posters when you're 12 or something like
yeah.
that, and eventually you're messing around with Illustrator or Photoshop or something like that.
Oh, that's funny that you say that, because I did that for our one of our buttons one year.
Mhm.
I took, it was when the Avengers Endgame was popular or had just come out, and I took
Mhm.
all of the heads off of the superheroes and put historic figures from Maine on there. And that button down in Nationals contest. If nobody knows, students from each state get their own button that's given to them from each organization, and they trade them, try to collect them all down there. And so
Mm.
I gave every student only 5 of those, and they had another button that they could trade for the other ones. And it was, I mean, it's an economics lesson, right there.
Mm.
Kids trying to get those. Like, I pulled out a bag. I was standing around a group of students. I pulled out a bag of my own, and I had them in there, and I got swarmed. I mean, everybody wanted those. It was very interesting. But
That sounds much better. I can still remember going down there myself, and we didn't have custom made buttons or something. We had, I mean, they were fine. Obviously, maybe the Department of Agriculture or something had some, or Department of Tourism had some buttons like, here are the agricultural products of Maine, which
mhm.
is fun. But a potato is not as exciting as the Avengers, and you really cannot trade for a potato.
That's true. And you know what? I still have some of those potatoes. It's a little lapel pin, is what it is, of a potato. It says Maine on it. And every year, Idaho still wants to get in an argument with me, which potatoes are better. But I brought up the fact that not only did you help put a lot of the instructional sheets together, and help organize like judging times and schedules and check-in lists and all that stuff. But one of your lasting legacies with the program is actually creating the logo that we currently use. So, we have, I mean, I could pull up the actual logo on the screen, but I mean, we have it. This has become iconic, believe it or not,
Really?
in NHD land. So what happens is, I'm not sure if when you were going to when you were going down to the national contest, if you noticed this, or if this was actually happening at that time, but Minnesota, they are synonymous with the bowling shirt. Their teams are. So their staff is synonymous with wearing those. And Indiana, they started doing mechanics shirts, and they became synonymous wearing mechanic shirts. So I wanted to make sure that we became synonymous with something. So I started the Raglins. And so every
Okay.
year staff wears Raglins, and of course we put your logo on there, if you can see that. And now we are our brand is very well known in NHD land, and that's all because of your logo and our Raglins. And so
Wow.
that's all over the place. I think I gave you one of the Raglins at one point, right?
Oh yeah, I've got it in the other room. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, not only is staff wearing it now, but we actually have like students wearing them. So we have a different color raglan that they wear with the logo on it as well. And
Oh,
so
fantastic.
your logo is all over the place, and especially throughout Maine. But we've even like upped our game, and we have fleece vests with your logo on it now. So this is a big deal.
I've never been embroidered before.
Yes, right? Your design has been embroidered. So we are one of our regional contests is in Lewiston, and it's in an old mill, and it's in March, and so we all get cold, obviously. So we needed to make sure that we still stood out as a staff. So I was able to get some vests put together, and I thought it was really awesome that they were able to get your logo on there and look so nice. So
Great.
yeah. And so it's no joke. Your design has become pretty iconic, not only with our program, but we're pretty recognizable throughout the country.
Well done.
Well done to you. So, But let's see if we have any other questions with NHD here. So do you remember any of like the more interesting things that you came across in the library when you were either volunteering or doing any research or anything? Anything that stood out to you as something like this, like jumped off the page and you just thought was very interesting?
Um, I think one of the things that it made me realize, yes, you are in an archive that's full of historic objects. This is the stuff of history. It's in the archives of a politician who was sort of at the center of the national conversation in the 1950s is a bit silly, but it's finding a letter from Roald Dahl, like a personally signed letter from Roald Dahl is just uh, it was so odd, but it really placed Margaret in history, and you could sort of see the context there, and also someone that I had read so much growing up, just to see, here's something that he wrote just and signed, and it's here, and it's just sort of part of the whole story of things.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really fun and cool parts about digging, having the time to actually dig through an archive. You're always going to come across something strange or something you would never expect like that. Like, why would Roald Dahl, out of all people, write a letter to Margaret Chase Smith? But he did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's sort of and it's perfectly understandable when you think it out. And I think it's that his wife was playing Senator Smith in a film or a play or something like that.
Yes. What is her name? Of course, it's Patricia. Of course, I'm going to remember it once the recording stops.
Well, yes, naturally.
Yeah, but yeah, she played Margaret
memory.
for a made-for-TV movie in the 70s. I think she won an Emmy for that role as well. And of course, it was about the Declaration of Conscience and Joseph McCarthy. Yeah, and I think Margaret tried to contact her or something, and Roald Dahl wrote a letter back saying that she was maybe out of the country working on another movie or something like that, but he would be sure that the letter got to her or something like that.
Yeah, and it's not it's not certainly something that is of the biggest national consequence around Cold War politics. It's not even I'm trying to write a book about you, and can we collaborate? Something that an author or a literary historian would say how interesting, but it's just two people interacting, but they both happen to be very well-known and important people in their particular spheres.
Yeah. Yep. His wife's last name was Greer. I remember that. I don't know if it's Patricia. I want to say it, but I could be wrong.
Sounds right to me, but yeah.
Yeah. So, I've mentioned you're in England now.
Yes.
So what are you currently doing in England? What is someone from Cornville, Maine doing living in England now?
Well, I mean, what I'm doing at the moment is working at an organization that makes software for museums, archives, libraries, and other places like that. Because going back to volunteering at the Margaret Chase Smith Library when I came out of university, I'd done a master's in England, came back to central Maine, discovered that an English degree is not really a vocational degree that gets you directly into a lot of professions, and was looking around for somewhere to go and something to do, and the first place that I thought of was the Margaret Chase Smith Library, and wound up volunteering there very shortly thereafter, but then started working at other archives, the Kennebec Historical Society. I started working at the Skowhegan History House just down the hill from the Margaret Chase Smith Library, and doing a lot of work in archives, museums, and the like in central Maine. And then did a degree in that as well, and that degree was over here because I had met someone in England. And now I continue to work in the sector, but sort of more on the other side. And I used to travel around quite a bit to go and see various organizations and run training courses for them on how to use the software. But I haven't really been able to do that for the past half year, unfortunately. Which, I mean, it is quite nice to travel for work if you are traveling for work explicitly to go to a museum, because you're not in, you know, I don't know, a parking lot on the outskirts of a city, or you're not just hanging at an airport conference center. You're at a museum with interesting attractions at all times. So it's quite a fun job, actually, for seeing the entire sector and getting a chance to talk to people and think about how objects are cataloged and preserved and looked after.
That's fascinating. I didn't even think of that fact that, you know, yeah, you get to travel around. Not only do you get to travel around, but you get to go to all these interesting museums and archives.
Oh yeah,
and see some very interesting things. So the programming that you're working on, it's kind of like what archivists and librarians would use to start cataloging their collections, correct?
Yeah.
Wow. All right. A very important thing to do. Is this something that also helps with like emergency management when it comes to libraries?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So it's, I mean, it's ultimately it gives you intellectual control over what you've got. So, you know, if there is a fire or a flood or something like that, you can easily consult the system and see, you know, what's the highest priority, where is everything, what should we, you know, tell the firefighters to recover first.
Yeah.
But also, you know, in much less drastic situations, it's how you answer research questions. It's how you keep track of where everything is, because even if, you know, you're what might be considered a relatively small archive or museum, you're still collecting thousands of objects, and keeping track of those is a full-time task. And anything else that you might care to record. So the you know, one of the interesting things about museum and archive objects is just how a lot of the stuff that goes along with them is utterly insubstantial. You know, the difference between a cannonball that was made and never used and a cannonball that was used in some, you know, really important battle, maybe the Battle of Saratoga or something like that, is not really very evident if you're just looking at the two side by side. But if you've got that written down somewhere, you can tell a much more interesting, much greater story with it. So it also holds that sort of intangible historical connection.
Yeah, I mean, we probably could have done a half-hour talk just on that, on the importance of record keeping and how it's done. And instead of talking about NHD, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
because what you're saying is totally, absolutely valid. And I'm saying that because I'm currently working on our emergency plan at the library.
okay.
So that's why that popped into my head. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is one of the things that I do as well, is if new people get hired on at the company, you know, often they are computer science majors, or they, you know, worked making bank software or something like that, and they come in and they say, okay, so we're making databases, and it's like, well, we're making databases, but we're making them for a reason.
Yeah. It's funny, unless you actually work or volunteer in the library and archive world, you don't, sometimes you don't understand how meticulous and time consuming it can be to make sure that your collections are protected and cataloged properly and stored.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So we might have to have you back on to talk all about all that, because I mean, it can be a fascinating topic, actually. But I mean, we're kind of getting past our time, but I do have two more quick questions for you before I sign off. I mean, this is currently what is it? It's a little after 1:30 on Thursday, 2 days after the presidential election here in the United States. It's what, almost 7, little after 7:30 your time, right?
6, yeah, almost 7 o'clock.
Almost 7 o'clock your time. And that's what, November 5th, 2 days after the election. Like I said, what is the reporting like right now across the pond on how they're reporting the presidential election?
It's close. I mean, to To be honest, one of the really weird things I think is I before traveling and living abroad, just sort of expected things to be tremendously different over here, and they are if you actually interact with people. But if you are shut up in your house hiding from a virus, you're on the internet, and the best reporting about the election is American reporting, because everyone's just sort of embedded in it and they can't stop thinking about it. So, it's really weird because if you go down to a newsstand, of course, you're going to get a totally different selection of information or perspectives. But I can just be on 538 and the New York Times and all these sorts of American news sources and get basically the same story anyone else does. I just don't get quite the same buzz of just presence.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. I mean, is this something that they're following very closely right now, like on the BBC and stuff like that? I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah. Because I mean, you guys today started another shutdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, the prime minister has shut. I think
Yeah.
for I don't know how long.
A month now.
A month.
And
Okay.
basically all shops are shut except for grocery stores, essential shops. You really shouldn't go anywhere unless you're going to work or getting groceries, going for exercise, or caring for other people.
Mhm.
But I didn't really notice because I couldn't stop refreshing the New York Times, to be honest.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, you and probably not probably the majority of Americans doing the same thing, just watching a map right now. So, but I've got to end this on a higher note than that. so of course, I consider Ben a friend of mine, and we when we worked together, we definitely bonded over bad movies. And what I mean by bad movies is we love to watch movies that can be so bad that they're good, or that they're just so crazy bananas out there and they're just fun to watch. And so I have to ask, what is your favorite movie out of the Fast and Furious franchise? And that can include Hobbs and Shaw, because I would say that's part of it as well. So
I would include that, yeah. Oh, it's a tough one,
right?
I have to say. I think it's probably Fast Five, just because at that point I hadn't realized that they were good. I'd seen a couple of them, but I hadn't realized quite what I was in for, and they hadn't quite realized how good they were either. And I went to go see that at the drive-in, which is the way that you go to see Fast and Furious movies, because then you can peel out afterward.
Absolutely.
And a friend of mine thought we were going to go see Pirates of the Caribbean, so he was dressed as a pirate for a drive-in movie that was not about pirates.
Nice.
And yeah, we were all blown away by the sheer absurdity of and audacity of everything that they did, blasting down the streets of Rio with a bank vault hooked up to the back of your car.
That's right.
Because that's, of course, the best way to rob a bank is to hook up the bank vault to your car, drive the vault out of the bank, and just blast down the streets of a major world city.
That's such a good one. I think that was the first one The Rock was in as well. So
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, didn't he? Yeah, he flexed. He broke his arm. He was in a cast, and then he just flexed and he removed the cast, and he was fine.
Yeah, actually I think one of the last movies I saw. Last movie I saw in the theater would have been, of course, Star Wars. But I think last summer was Hobbs and Shaw, and we went to go see that in the theater, and I was cackling so loud in the theater at that movie because it was so ridiculously fun and just. There was so many times I laughed out loud watching the movie, but in a good way. It was just so much fun to watch. So I'm that one, and I would probably be with you on number 5. Would be my 2 out of that franchise. But we're probably going to bore people with this section right here because rambling on with that. But I do want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule of lockdown in England to talk with us. This will probably be posted here in probably a week or two on social media, but I thought it would be interesting to also get that take of what exactly is being reported right now as we're tallying the votes right now here in
Yes.
the United States. But it's always good to see you, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see you too.
It's always fun to talk with you, and I might be contacting you again. Maybe we can actually start talking about some cataloging software or something like that. I honestly
Yes,
think
let's talk record keeping.
that's right. I honestly think it'd be a really good topic to talk about on this. So thanks again, and I'll have our next installment here probably coming up soon in another couple of weeks, maybe another NHD interview. So we'll talk then.